It's confirmed. The gold standard just returned. And the dollar? It's dying right in front of our eyes. While you were sleeping last night, something happened. Something that will change everything you thought you knew about money. Your savings, your retirement, even the cash sitting in your wallet right now. For 53 years, the world ran on a promise. A lie, actually. But this week, that lie started falling apart. A group of major countries quietly made their first moves. They didn't use dollars. They used gold, real metal, not paper promises. The numbers are brutal. The speed is frightening. And what's coming next will shake you to your core. Welcome, my wise friends, to the financial forensics. Now listen, you've seen recessions. You've survived crashes. You've watched markets rise and fall. But what I'm about to show you today, you've never seen this before. Nobody alive has. So if you care about protecting what you've worked your whole life to build, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. It costs you nothing, but keeps you informed when it matters most. Drop a like if you want more content like this. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from today? Now stay with me until the end. Because the final piece of this puzzle is the one that changes everything. Let's begin. Picture this. A man wakes up on a Wednesday morning, coffee in hand, phone in the other. He scrolls through the news like always. Everything looks normal. But something has changed. Something massive. Something that will rewrite the rules of money itself. It started 53 years ago in 1971, when President Nixon walked up to a microphone and made a promise. A temporary promise, he said. Just a short pause. Nothing permanent. That pause never ended. Until now. The numbers tell a story that central bankers won't say out loud. In 2022 and 2023, global central banks purchased over 2,000 tons of gold, the highest volume since 1950. China's official reserves jumped by 225 tons in just 12 months. Turkey doubled its holdings. India, Poland, Singapore, all moving in the same direction at the same time. This isn't normal portfolio balancing, it's pattern behavior. Compare this to 1968, when central banks rushed to exchange dollars for gold before the London gold pool collapsed. The velocity was identical. The silence from officials was identical. Back then they called it maintaining confidence. 3 years later, the gold window slammed shut. Here's the anomaly. These purchases aren't being funded by selling other assets. They're funded by printing local currencies and converting them immediately into gold. It's like trading IOUs for hard assets before someone questions the IOU's value. The question nobody's answering: why now? Why this synchronized urgency across nations that rarely agree on anything? The pattern suggests preparation, not panic. And preparation implies knowledge of something coming, something that makes holding paper promises far riskier than holding metal. The words matter more than people realize. When officials say temporary measures or maintaining stability, history shows what comes next. In August 1971, President Nixon announced a temporary suspension of dollar to gold convertibility. He used phrases like protecting American workers and defending against speculators. That temporary measure never ended. It became the permanent floating currency system we live under today. Now listen to current language. The European Central Bank recently mentioned exploring alternative reserve frameworks. Russia's finance minister called dollar dependence a temporary phase in monetary evolution. China's state media uses terms like transition period when discussing currency systems. These aren't random word choices. They're the same diplomatic cushioning used before major financial restructuring. Here's the red flag. In 1971, officials denied any gold standard change was coming, right up until the announcement. Today, the denials sound nearly identical. The dollar remains the world's reserve currency gets repeated like a mantra, even as the evidence points elsewhere. The unknown variable: how long between the language shift and the actual system change? In 1971, it was 18 months from whispers to execution. If the pattern holds, the timeline has already started. The question isn't whether the language signals change, it's how far along that change already is. What started as speculation is now documented infrastructure. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, have built a gold-based settlement system that processes trade without touching the dollar. This isn't theoretical. In 2023, Russia sold oil to India and received payment in dirhams, which were then converted to gold through UAE vaults. China and Brazil finalized yuan real trade agreements with gold as the balancing mechanism. The transactions happened. The infrastructure exists. Think of it like building a second highway next to the main road. For now, both roads work. But once the new highway proves faster and cheaper, traffic shifts permanently. Here's the irregularity. These systems were built quietly, without the usual international announcements or media coverage. Most people learned about the Petrodollar when it was already decades old. This alternative system is being constructed in reverse. Operational first, public acknowledgement later. The historical parallel runs to 1944, when Bretton Woods created dollar dominance while the world was distracted by war. Now, during inflation chaos and geopolitical tension, a new architecture is being assembled. The unanswered question: how much trade volume has already shifted to these rails? If the number is small, it's experimental. If it's large, it's operational. And nobody's releasing those figures. Foreign holders are quietly exiting US Treasuries at a scale that breaks historical norms. China reduced its Treasury holdings by over $200 billion between 2022 and 2024. Japan, traditionally the most loyal buyer, cut positions for 5 consecutive quarters. Belgium, Saudi Arabia, and the Caymans, all showing the same pattern. This matters because Treasuries have been considered the world's safest asset for 50 years. When central banks dump safety, they found something they consider safer. The anomaly isn't just the selling, it's who's not buying to replace them. Normally, when one country sells, another steps in. Now there's a bid shortage. The Federal Reserve itself has become the buyer of last resort, absorbing bonds that foreign nations no longer want. Compare this to 1979, when Treasury yields spiked because foreign confidence collapsed. The difference? Back then, gold was $300 an ounce. Today, it's above $2,600 and climbing. It's like watching customers leave a bank quietly, one at a time, before the rush starts. The exits are calm but consistent. The unknown. At what threshold does steady selling become a crisis? And more importantly, have we already crossed it without realizing? The evidence suggests the Treasury market isn't broken yet, but the trust holding it together is fracturing. Gold isn't just being purchased, it's being physically moved. Germany repatriated 674 tons from New York and Paris between 2013 and 2017. Hungary brought home its entire reserve from London in 2018. Poland, Netherlands, Austria, all demanded their gold back on home soil. Now the velocity has increased. In 2023, central banks moved more physical gold than any year since the 1970s. This isn't paper gold or futures contracts. These are actual bars, loaded onto planes and secured in national vaults. The pattern echoes 1968, when France demanded physical delivery of its gold from the US Charles de Gaulle, understood that gold held in foreign vaults isn't truly yours. That repatriation helped trigger the breakdown of Bretton Woods. Think of it like moving your savings from a shared account into your own safe. You do that when trust erodes. Here's the anomaly. Countries aren't explaining why they need gold physically closer. The official reasons, security audits or modernizing storage, don't justify the urgency. When nations act fast but speak vaguely, they're preparing for scenarios they won't publicly name. The open question: what event would require immediate access to physical gold reserves? The speed of movement suggests these governments already have an answer they're not sharing. For 50 years, one rule dominated global energy. Oil is priced and paid in dollars. That rule is breaking. In 2023, Saudi Arabia began accepting yuan for oil sales to China. Russia now conducts most energy trade in rubles, yuan, or gold. Iran sells oil to India in rupees. Each transaction chips away at the system that made dollar demand permanent. The petrodollar was born in 1974 when the US and Saudi Arabia made a secret deal. Saudi Arabia would price all oil in dollars. America would provide military protection. This forced every oil-importing nation to hold dollars, creating artificial demand that supported American debt. Think of it like a toll booth on the only highway. Everyone needed dollars to pass through. Now, new roads are opening without toll booths. The irregularity. Saudi Arabia hasn't officially announced the end of its dollar-exclusive policy, but the transactions tell a different story. Actions are moving faster than announcements, a signature pattern of major transitions. The historical echo is clear. When Britain lost its oil currency advantage after World War II, the pound collapsed within 2 decades. The unknown. How long before dollar-priced oil becomes the exception rather than the rule? The infrastructure for alternatives already exists. Only momentum remains. This isn't your grandfather's gold standard. Nobody is proposing fixed exchange rates or convertible paper currency. What's emerging is something different, a parallel system where gold settles what dollars used to settle. The old gold standard meant governments promised to exchange currency for gold at set prices. That system ended in 1971. The new version makes no such promise. Instead, gold simply becomes the preferred reserve asset and trade settlement tool outside Western systems. Think of it like a second operating system running alongside the first. Both work, but one doesn't depend on the other. Over time, users migrate to whichever system serves them better. The patterns from earlier sections now connect. Central banks accumulating gold, treasuries being sold, physical metal returning home, energy trade leaving dollar rails. These aren't separate events, they're components of one transition. The anomaly worth noting, none of this required an announcement, no Bretton Woods conference, no Nixon-style speech. The shift happened through thousands of small decisions that, together, created irreversible momentum. The unsettling question remains: if the dollar's role shrinks quietly, when do holders of dollar-denominated assets realize the foundation shifted beneath them? By the time it becomes obvious, the exit doors may already be crowded,